All right, cool. I think we're good to go. So this is my first stream trying to do this kind of thing in a while. Probably because I am employed now, so that's the big update. Anyway, for work and for just mostly out of fascination and interest, I've been trying to get into all of the APIs and frameworks, libraries that are available. Sorry, I was just checking that my mic is working. All the frameworks that are available to try to make, to not reinvent the wheel in the space of things like building large language models, well, not building them, but using them to build applications, primarily RAG. It kind of feels like this is the primary use case. People are building chatbots. I'm not really that interested in chatbots. I feel like there are more creative things you can do with language. I think we're used to thinking that language is something that you chat with, and like there are probably more interesting things you can do where you can take typical applications you would build and inject just a little bit of LLM magic in there and get, pretty amazing results. Just small amounts of intelligence injected into applications where usually we would be hard coding things. So I want to get into it. I assume that the stream is going to sound bad and there's going to be problems because I never do this. And I'm also on my second coffee already. Most of the first coffee was dedicated to just getting started. So goal for today, it's 8:30. What do I want to do? And will anyone watch this? I don't know, right? Um, so I've got these tutorials. I usually don't like to do this. I would rather learn by challenges, but I don't see any high quality challenges for this kind of stuff. And ironically trying to get Claude Sonnet to convert these um, walkthroughs into challenges didn't really work very well. But maybe that's the kind of thing we want to learn how to do, how to build pipelines that make that kind of thing easy. That would be a cool project, right? Like turn walkthroughs into code challenges. I don't know. But for now, we're just going through these because I need to there's a lot of APIs to understand in Langchain. There's like a lot of different imports and things to use. And so understanding those and then using things correctly will allow me to, again, not reinvent the wheel. So yeah, let's get into it. So I've already done the simple one. I'll just walk through that. Basically, we have a couple core things. There are these like hard-coded messages that you can send. So this is not a chat model. This is not something where you have a reoccurring chat. There's no API built into that. This is just where you would send in a set of messages to a large language model with user versus system. Like basically, what are the entities which are sending the message? That kind of metadata. I think that is marked here somewhere. I guess that's what happens when you have system message. It actually gives sort of some metadata along with a message that says this is from the system. And my understanding is that LLMs are trained well to accept these kinds of metadata. Some of the other core things we learned about were chaining using what looks like bash pipe operators, which is useful. Yeah, so templates. I have some of this stuff outlined in, let's see if I can get down here, in notes over here. So this is what we learned yesterday that I didn't stream. Yeah, so, and generally the way these things work, there's a name for this. First of all, there's two things. The Langchain expression language, LCEL, corresponds to, I believe, like the way we're doing this, the way we're using this piping. And then inside of the Langchain expression language, you have things that implement, I guess, something like a runnable interface. Python doesn't have interfaces, so I'm not sure exactly what is meant by that. We could actually look at that. So like, let's see. So let's see. So it's a runnable protocol. Implement the runnable protocol. It sounds like it's an interface, right? And I don't think the implementation is worth looking into. Anyway, yeah, so let's move forward. So again, the way this stuff works is that you can create functions that take input, usually text, with some metadata, and you can pass it through things. You could pass it through prompt template here, which allows you to, well, in this case, you're not sending text you want to send. You're actually sending configuration. Then it goes through the prompt template and creates text which can be sent to a model, which would often be messages with metadata about what is the entity sending the message. And then you send that, the output from the model, because input to the model is whatever, sort of the beginning of what goes to the GPT decoder, and then whatever is passed on the output then goes through a parser so that we don't get all of the other kinds of metadata that you get back from a model about like how many tokens and all of that kind of stuff. We'll just send back some text. So basically the parser will transform that into text as opposed to something that is easy to look at. But you can also have other kinds of parsers. In this case, we're using the string output parser, I think. So that's funny. I didn't get into. I thought I was going to get right into the tutorials, but I'm like recapping for myself. Let's see. Yeah, string output parser, which you can import via something. I should probably write that down. It's like via. I love how it's like now it's telling me bad spelling. Good fix for that is this. So I think it's through Langchain core, and then it's output parsers, something like that. I think. Do I have this over here? Chain core. I think it's this. Let's check. I would hope for like a code example or something. Oh, okay, this is what we'll do. We'll just do something. Well, I guess, yeah, I should have done this first. It's just in here somewhere. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So Langchain core, output parsers. Now we remember. I think the other imports, primary imports, it might be used to keep like a running list of imports. That seems useful, right? So just for memory, because my memory is terrible. Let's see. Let's call this like, and then we'll have, so we have from Langchain core. What kinds of things do we get from that? Maybe even to not get these kinds of spelling errors. Langchain core. System message. I think you also have AI message, I think. We'll add it when we get to it, I think, is the way to look at this. Cool. We also have what we just talked about, Langchain core, output parsers, port, string, put parser, like that. What are our prompts? I'll just copy this one in. Template. I really think it's going to be useful to do this. And then the models, of course, from OpenAI. Or whatever. In my case, OpenAI seems like the just who cares default. Like the, I don't know. That seems like the one that, if it could work, it would work. For various language tasks. Okay. All right, we have this, and there are others, but yeah. So what are we missing? I guess we'll fill that in as we go. Oh yeah, and this is, it's AI message. Like that, right? Yeah. AI message. And then we're about to get to this. I'll go ahead and put it in there. Actually, I'll label this by, by section, essentially. So this will be our, just like chat completions. Not even chat completions. This will be like more just completions. Yeah. Here we'll have our like chat and context stuff. Okay. We'll edit this later. Cool. All right. So where are we at? Let's actually get into this. Build a chatbot. What are we going to do? Okay, so no RAG. The point is that this is about adding context to these language completions, hopefully with an API that makes that so I'm not just keeping track of all of the messages and resending them every time. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. I think we already have all this stuff good to go. I'll also include switching back and forth. Over here, I'm gonna also include what are like the imports for these sorts of things. So Langchain is gonna be needed for that. I think you also need, what else do you need? Something for OpenAI, right? Some of these config details are not necessary. I think this stuff doesn't matter. Okay. That's more about the way, yeah, that's like config stuff for what happens when you actually install. Yeah, I think you get Langchain Core for free from Langchain. Install. Okay. Seriously, back to it. Okay. So I already have worked through some of this stuff. We're using 3.5, which is actually a little bit better at responding to whatever you ask it to do, as opposed to saying, sorry, I can't do that. So it's actually in some ways like more useful. We got our OpenAI key in the environment. This was stupid. I should have just like named it this, but I'm not going to fix it on a stream for obvious reasons. So let's see. I think I want like someone to watch this now. Like, I'm gonna be here all day. Like, that's okay. All right, so yeah, I mean, I don't think we have anyone. Just no one's gonna like automatically watch, That's funny because like someone could absolutely be watching. Is the reality. Anyway. Cool. Okay, let's do it. All right, so we have all this stuff working. Let's just double check this. All right, so what are we doing here? These are the usual suspects. We have our hard-coded messages, not prompts. We have a parser for this kind of thing, simple chain. Invoke, you can call on chains, you can call on individual aspects of chains because they are runnable. We invoke with a human message, AI message, and yeah, so this is just like a basic chat to see what would happen, but this is not what we're looking for. Ultimately, this is just us re-implementing chat with the previous just completions, like, you know, a way of doing things, just using the model. So yeah, so this will work, but it's not ideal. Okay, using stateful wrappers. Yeah, this comes directly from the tutorial because that's what we're doing today. We're doing noob tutorial day. Okay, let's see, what do we need? Am I even in the right one? I'm not, right? I'm in the first one. No, I'm not. Okay. We made it through this. Cool. Message history. Gonna copy this to my imports. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Base chat, message history, in-memory chat, message history. We'll understand what the differences are between these things. We have store. Yeah, so this is just the classic pattern of grabbing if it doesn't exist, creating it along the way if it does not exist, and then grabbing it. So no matter what we're doing is getting our chats. All right, let's read how this works. I was just thinking about how whenever I see streamers who will go through things and they'll read everything one by one. I think I'm like, maybe you should do that. I feel like as a viewer, I might want someone to just say you know, in their own language what something says. So that's what I'm gonna do. Session ID is used to distinguish between separate conversations. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this is the key point when calling the new chain. Okay. So yeah, so why this format is given based on what the API expects, what the methods expect. So I see, that's interesting. So clearly this with message history is created with the model, obviously, but also with this function that expects session ID, which we'll always have to create something like that has logic for getting the probably a set of different things which can be usable for message history. I think in this case we use in-memory chat message history. I see, in-memory chat message history, base chat message history. Interesting. So this, whatever this returns, is of this type. I mean, okay, now I'm curious. Is that really, come on. Wouldn't you expect that this would open to a different link? Would open to a different tab? Okay. But seriously, let's look at it, just if we're gonna do it correctly. Got it. Okay, I get the idea. So anyway, the point is that runnable, some kind of, the kind of thing that you can pass in chats that is stateful, expects a model, and then a way to figure out how to get whatever is the history. So we pass in this config here too with message history. This is a little bit verbose for me, but anyway, it's interesting that you wouldn't just pass in this object with session ID. Okay, so we pass that in, and in other words, this just gives us more programmatic control over, as opposed to just passing this in a context, because that's what I would almost expect, is that you would like pass it in some kind of history. This just gives us multiple ways to I see. Another simpler way you might look at this that I would expect is that you would just pass it the store, and it would just expect it has to be a dictionary of IDs mapping to stuff, and then you would be able to pass in the ID. But this gives us more control. What freedom does this give you if you don't just have to use a particular implementation? You could be more programmatic about how to figure out what is the ID. It might be API calls in here or something. I don't know. Okay, so we understand what we need to do here. We pass the config so that we actually get the correct. This allows us to send different messages to our kind of chat app, essentially, that we already have, just based on whatever that config is. That could be based on, like in a chat app, would just be like when you click on, this would just be set in like React state or something, and then you would send the message with that session ID, and as they say, Bob's your uncle, you would get the stuff that you need. Okay, cool. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, probably if someone was watching this, they would have figured it out before me. Anyway, we invoke this, we get the content. I see, so just showing how this can work, right? Config is config. Okay, so let's try to implement this here in sort of the way that you would normally. So we have all the session history and stuff, right? We ran this. Cool. Okay. So what we might do is have our messages set up. Why did I not get an auto? Yeah, so we'll say And it's cool. So you can pass in multiple messages if you wanted to, but in this case, we're probably just going to pass in one. I'm doing something a little different here. I think it'll be clear after I do it. Okay. We have our messages here, and what we want to do is get the config as well. And see what I just wanted to, like, get what would this actually look like if we, I don't know, just making this a bit easier to actually just pass in the messages with that context. So let's see. Thought that would work. Will this work? Okay. I'll make this a little cleaner with my Vim when I need it. Okay, so then we just want to I was thinking about, can I actually like do something interesting to pipe in those messages, but probably not. Okay. So now we have the response, and we'll just print it. Yeah. So content is what we need. Why do we need that? I think it's because we haven't parsed it. So I'll try that in a second, try to remember what I learned previously. So okay, we don't have human message somehow. We do. Oh. Cool. That's good. That works. That's what we want. Now I want to test the theory that I'm going to call chain will be equal to, I'll do it in the other one. So what I want to do is see if, yes, we can invoke on this runnable, and then we can get its content out. I think that's because what we get out of this is a response from the model, but that could actually be passed through the parsers that I learned about in previous tutorial. So I think it's possible that we can do that. I'll import it here, I guess. Why not? All right, whoops. And then we will say, I'll be lazy. Where's my like autocomplete, I think I can just call it like this, as opposed to making it and then, yeah. Okay, so we see that actually works. So pretty cool. There are other kinds of parsers. What I should have done is this, to be honest, like just for the sake of a fitting convention. Cool. And I'm wasting all my money on these calls, but it's like less than a cent or something. All right. Let's see where we're at. So that's what we've learned, is that we essentially have using this with message history. Now, what's interesting is that I would think that this would continue to have state. So shouldn't I not need the first message now? Like, isn't that true? Cool. Yeah, we can send anything. We could even send I mean, they do what they tell you, what you tell them to. That's for sure. Okay, that's good. Let's go back to where what we had. What is the example? Cool. Last time. It's interesting that you get these kinds of like almost stateless replies. Then, as you sort of reduce down that huge message context, is what you get. Now, let's see what we need to know moving forward. Yeah, what we get for free on this is both message history and different context, and that's because we pass in a function with the model that maps IDs to, so maps IDs is about how we get different session contexts, and then in those IDs, what they, I guess, usually would need to map to would be this kind of thing. Because I wonder what would happen if I get, it probably needs this, expects this kind of function. Probably I could send it something weird. That would be interesting. This has to with, but the idea is that when you, I'm just refreshing this for myself so I can remember it, but like what you end up getting is yeah, essentially this thing that will always be invoked with that config, right? That's the way to think about it. So this allows us to ad hoc, like, send new chats or existing ones. It doesn't matter. Like the key just, it's like a default dictionary or something. Like you just send some kind of ID and then you get fresh conversation related to that on the fly. It's very cool. Okay, that is useful. I get it now. I kind of understand the how you can configure this to your use case. Let's go into the next part. In this case, obviously it's just okay. So what we're doing here is we have I don't think I've seen this before. Chat prompt template. I think the last time I used this, we didn't do from messages. I guess we did. Okay. And yeah, let's add that to the imports. So oh, I guess we did that. Did we get this? Okay. And then okay. Yeah. So before we copy, let's figure out what we're doing. Okay, so yeah, we have a system, and this is a this message cannot be a template. This one can be. Interestingly, I mean, you won't be able to pass any inputs to this. Oh, you can pass in variable name here. Okay, that I didn't know. What is messages placeholder? Okay, I think I see. This is worth reading about. How do I make this dark mode? All right. Okay. It's finally time. We're going to ask AI about how to write AI-based code. Yeah. Okay, so what I primarily wanted to make sure of is that this doesn't become like one user message, but it becomes multiple. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Okay, interesting. Cool, now we know. Now we know. Okay. Yep. So that's how that works. So just placeholder, just adding that to my big list of imports. Cool. So now we can just add this with that messages key like we mentioned before. Let's see this. And what was our model that we added in here? Model is just something we had up here. It's just the model. There is no state, right? Yep. Cool. Yeah, so we're trying to predict where we're headed with this. So I might want to send this to a like runnable with history, whatever that was called. And I would do that first, but then after that I could send this anything. So it would be really cool if inside of, I think what I'm predicting is that inside of this, it would be nice if like we could pass in a function that would just give this stuff to begin with, if it's not in the store. So what are we going to do here? Oh, I see. Okay, so let's think about this. We have our chain as opposed to the model. My thought would be, I want to be clear about exactly how this works. When you send this through, when we call invoke here, it kind of looks to me like this human message would get passed through this every time. And so what you would get is that you would have your previous system message if they say something down here like, okay, but here's the problem with this. Okay, yeah. That's what I want. It's kind of weird. Okay, this is actually not helpful. All right, so what do we do? How do we figure out what's really going on here? Yeah, that's what I want. I want a way to like just inspect what is the chat history. Right? I think that would be, this is like our base. This is what we can interface with, so. This stuff is, this is gone somewhere. That's cool. This will be useful later on. Right now we're doing like really terse debugging. Let's call this, let's put this into a folder for like, what should we call this? I don't know, workflow for now. Debugging. It's worth looking into later. Okay. Sure. All right, we'll see. Let's look at what we got. I'm just going to copy this stuff in. Yeah, so that's just our chain. Have all that stuff ready to go. Yep. We might as well. Now we want to see okay, I think it doesn't know. Sounds right. Get session history. What is what's interesting is that I think this will work. Okay, that doesn't work. Either way, this is not what I expected. Can we do this? This is what we need. It's very interesting. Yeah, so yeah, this doesn't make any sense to me. What doesn't make sense to me is that the way this is designed, I would expect that when you pass a message in through the chain, that everything would get processed, including, like at first, if you just took this and we passed to it a message, what would it always give you? We're piping this stuff. That's what I probably need to inspect. Okay, so we pass it a prompt. More coffee. We need this. Okay, so we send this thing. It's going to get piped straight through the prompt. What we get out of that that's what I want to know. Oh, I just realized I didn't switch screens back. Anyway. I think it's probably just calling model invoke and then calling like prompt invoke and then that's not what I'm asking. Okay, cool. All right, let's actually switch back now. Cool. Okay, so that's the question. So what actually happens here is that this is not magic. We send this through the prompt. It's always going to have that system message, and then the messages, and then you'll send it to the model, no matter what. The difference is that you can now wrap this in the same message history object. Isn't that the same thing? Oh, okay. Okay, why are we using that key as opposed to this? Let's see. Like I know that where did we see this? We saw that you can have a messages. Yeah, that's with the prompt. Variable name. Variable name is messages. Okay. I think this will help. Anyone who, there's no one watching, but if you were, you would know what I'm doing. I would probably be familiar. Okay, so what we need to know is Yeah, I think we're gonna have to do this old school and just like understand what's going on. Okay, so let's do that. You know. All right, coffee break real quick. Because I want to know. You know. So let's see. That did not do what I wanted it to do. All right. Okay, so hopefully you can still hear me. All right. All right, let's do this. So what do we need to do? We need to see what we have. We have so it's clear what the config will do. I have to assume that what we're going to do is send this through the chain. So I don't want to do that. I want to change this a bit. We'll keep this here. Instead, what I want to do is send it through the prompt. Let's see what we get. That's interesting. Let's change this up. So we get this value out. So it should have message history. It's interesting that calling this with chain would do something different. Oh, okay. I mean, that does make sense, I guess. Yeah. Let's undo that a little bit. I see. Maybe creating the object over and over again is causing the problem. Maybe that's what's true. Okay. It should be that when I create this for the first time, okay. That's a little annoying, isn't it? cool. So we get this as a message, we get the human message. If I do it again, what happens? It stays the same. That's interesting. Why? You know? We have the session history. If we make this a chain, so I mean, I want to be able to see why these things happen in this way. Yeah, that doesn't really make sense to me. I think I kind of have to either move on or figure this out, right? Seems weird to me. Because this makes sense. It does. That you would send it through the model and that there would be some kind of in-memory chat message history. Let's look at this. Yeah, this is just weird to me. Okay. Model get session history. Okay. Interesting because it seems like what we first do is okay, so I think I was wrong. Okay, let's consider how we might have been wrong. Okay, so I have duplication here, but when I create this and I invoke with a new message, what I was thinking is that the message would first get passed through the prompt in the chain, then be combined with previous history. Or really what I was thinking is it would go through the prompt. That's interesting. So what you send in here will eventually, my prediction is that this stuff first gets combined with the history, the messages that you send. So this thing is itself, okay, that's the problem. It's not that, I need to realize that like this thing takes an input. It does something with the input first. So the first thing it does is it takes all the messages that you have. Somehow, so the system message, that's really interesting. Sending a new message, a new system message. Okay, that's actually a good question. Come on. I mean, from what we're hearing, I think this is still weird. From what we're hearing, we'll see. Okay, that's interesting. It's important to think about, okay, we learned something. What we learned is that when you're using a runnable with message history, the messages you invoke on that runnable with message history, those messages directly, think about saving them first, and then they go in through the chain. I was kind of thinking they go in through the chain. I guess this should have been obvious. But these messages actually get saved first. So okay, we figured something out. Cool. Let's finish this thing. Keep going. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So back to it. This. Is there a quick way to delete this? It's really not a good way to. All right. What do we have? Got this guy. done that before. This will go through the entire chain. Let's do a new one. I don't know. None of this. We now understand. It's kind of nice, but the good question might be like, is there a way to save? Yeah, we would put something before this chain. Yeah. That's so cool. Okay. I'm just writing some notes. Want to process input before saved context. And easy. Okay. Add it to chain before with message history. That's how you do it. Okay. Now we're kind of understanding. Yeah, this makes me think lane graph would make sense. I'm starting to see that. Okay, that's exciting. Cool. So, with message history dot invoke, I got a message. This would give us a response. We don't just want a response though, right? Cool. Yep. And this is what allows us to inject messages in. Otherwise, we can't use the usual syntax like this. So that's why we do that. Okay. That's important. Important enough to have in the notes. We're gonna keep pushing on. Okay, so So that's why we need that. We need it because whoops, that's funny. We're not just sending in, we're sending in other variables. That's interesting. So we previously, this is doing two things at once, I think. I think it's actually useful for the prompt. And useful, because previously, oh, that's interesting. So how does this get sent to the prompt? It gets sent to this thing. It's not a very clean system yet. I think that we don't know how to do this well yet, but it's okay. I guess the idea is that now we actually send, this makes more sense to me, but now we actually send the input to be expected. Huh. The idea is that now what we're passing in, previously you didn't need this, you passed in the messages. When those messages went in, somehow they were passed to that prompt. guess it was smart enough to know that. This long form way feels like the more predictable way of doing this. Would this work? You know, would this work? Let's do another one. Let's go to 0. That's not precise. Okay. So even that doesn't work. It should work. This is like slow for some reason. I think I need to run this one again somehow. I guess that worked. Just trying the various combinations here. It's interesting that that doesn't work if you, that this doesn't work. It does work. I don't understand why. If there was anything else passed in here. I'm not really sure. It's not that important. Okay, that's fair. That works for me. Cool. I've said that a couple times now as if everything's gonna be fine, but I think finally we know what's going on. This should work now. We don't need this. We'll do it later. I get what's going on though. You can pretty much pass those messages, or you could pass them with a messages key. It'll be no big deal, as long as there's only one. Yeah. So this should work, even though we don't have that kind of thing. Okay. basically done this now. Oh, and that's because I sent it through parser. We should think about that. So we'll send this in. It will, so we know that the messages get saved. Yeah, these are going to get duplicated. Or, you know, going to be stored into context. So the key thing is that this is the kind of thing, only this is actually going to be updated before sent to the rest of the chain. When it gets into the chain, it's going to be sent to the prompt first with all the messages and the language. Then it's going to go through the model. Then it's going to go through the parser, which is really simple. That's enough. So what do we get that changed here? Now we have more responses. What does this mean? I think I know what it means. I think it means why are you asking this so much? Oh no. Okay. All right, never mind. Okay. One important concept to understand when building chatbots. Unbound, potentially overfill the context window, and therefore want to add a step that limits the size of the message that are passed. Importantly, that actually makes sense. So what we're saying is that after you get sort of whatever you send in, you send the message as key. Or you don't send the message as key because you just send messages and there's only one thing that could possibly go through the prompt, through the model, all this stuff. We've been over this too much. What you would see is that we need a way for that to be shortened before going through the chain part of the with message history, runnable message history, runnable with message history object, right? And so the way that we think about doing that is we can actually do that in the chain. Before it goes in the chain, we get to control it. This runnable thing is all it's doing is helping us like aggregate whatever is the message is part of what we send in. That's all it's doing. So and yeah, this is fantastic, right? Dude, this is great. I don't want to think about this. And somehow it I would think that it would be nice if you had something where as messages come in, you get a running total of max tokens. It seems like this is going to count them every time. But we may see that but this is just the basic way of doing this. It looks like it doesn't remove the system message, you know? But we'll get rid of hi on Bob. That won't be known anymore. Oh, this is nice. Okay. Yeah, I think so. I think that's good. Okay. Start on here. Okay. Yeah, there's lots of things we can do here. Let's get this before stopping for some lunch. Let's see. It took longer than expected. Okay. Let's add this to our imports. Okay. I think I understand. Okay, that's fair enough. This is interesting enough to write down. Alright, back to the main content here. Because it goes through here before it goes to the model. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, this makes enough sense. I'm actually just doing it again, but now this context will be here. Oh, so it's supposed to be. Okay, cool. Cool. Let's do it like that. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks for tuning in. If you did, but you didn't. I know you didn't, but you will eventually. I just have to learn this stuff. All right, what do we learn? This is going to be useful. Mostly about the fact that what is the mental model of this runnable with message history, as well as some stuff about trimming, but also thinking more generally about how chains work and like where the signal flow almost occurs. Because the way to think about this with message history thing is that you basically pass it some kind of way to access previous conversations and then some kind of chain. Really importantly, the chain actually runs after the so the chain actually runs after the inputs. I see now why that kind of thing happens. Anyway, so so the chain that we define that we pass to runnable history will run after you pass inputs that are invoked on what you get out of this, which is with message history. You can affect things that happen before. You could have a chain that goes in before this, but implicitly within this thing, the idea is that what you pass to it will first get combined with other things that you've passed to it, especially when you use this like messages input like parameter, which is here, input messages key. I'm going to put this over here. Input messages key. That will kind of define where what you pass in, where the thing that needs to be combined, that needs to be sort of like folded or reduced, are all these words that mean aggregating a list of similar things. That will happen, and then whatever you passed in with those combined context will get sent to your chain. And from there, inside the chain, you can do things like, interestingly, what comes before your chain is your object. So what can you pass? What exactly do we do here? Our chain was defined to be this thing that trims specifically the messages. Because we can't, it would be nice to be able to trim, to like pass the trimmer as something to do before it goes, like in the step where it's combining your message with the other messages. It would be nice to have the trimmer be applied, to have something you could apply to what you're duplicating. But instead, this is a little bit more explicit, and honestly, like, I'm happy about it. That would have been more hoops to jump through. But yeah, runnable pass through. This is one way that we'll probably use, one idiom, I guess, for probably the easiest one that they could think of to make it a one-liner, so that you can sort of cut down on the context of the messages that you're working on before they go through the prompt and the model. So before, you know, some way to, this is just a simple thing you can do. This is trimming I mean, this is us literally affecting our prompt input. It would be kind of nice to have a way to do this before it goes to the prompt input. But anyway, this is fine. What we get out of, what we will often get out of the runnable with message history is, yeah, what we'll usually get is often not just messages that are combined, but very often some kind of prompt. If it was just messages, we could just apply the trimmer, but it's not. So we do this because we will very often be sending to a prompt. Again, the whole point of this, last thing that I'm going to say about this broken record, runnable with message history, is that it is designed to take your input, which may be messages or maybe some kind of prompt input, doesn't matter, some sort of like dictionary. You give it the key or you just give it the messages, it will combine them and then let you run your chain as you had defined. And that's all this is. It's a way to add state so that you don't have to do it yourself. You could do it yourself. It would be about the same thing, honestly. But yeah, this is nice. I understand this mental model. The thing that you have here has state as opposed to being a function that just runs as more like a class. Okay, cool. Let's end this. Thanks.